Hey guys, Matt. Let's continue with the presentation of the fraud with the different topics and try to have as much fun as possible. We're actually getting somewhat towards the end of the fraud presentation. It's only been, what, months and months and months? There's that much fraud. If anything ever happens to this channel, guys, just a quick reminder to go to quantumofconscience.com. All run together. I'll just remove whatever I have there or put up a note as to how I'll be delivering the rest of the book. This book will get delivered. I don't. That's why I don't leave a lot of videos up other than the chapters, because I've seen any time they'll come along and start flagging and copyright striking, and that's why I delete videos, because ultimately I'll put a video up, but after 2 or 3 weeks, there's just no reason to leave it linger, even if it's just me talking. So let me continue with topic 1 of 2 today. Maybe I'll try to get 3 done. We'll see. The first topic title is called Evolution. Come down from the trees, Monkey Man. To question the established theory of evolution immediately labels anyone in this society insane. However, as usual, a close inspection with common sense breaks this one down as well. First, does anybody even notice that the key word here is theory? The theory of evolution? Theory means best guess about something. Even descendants of Darwin would acknowledge that the word theory has not been shed from the word evolution. They're still very tied together. There is no fact of evolution, is there? If it's still called a theory, that means by definition no one knows for sure, and if that's true, why would anybody like me be ridiculed for asking common sense questions? Evolution, as it's presented to us by modern science and clowns like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, is ridiculous. DNA cannot be changed into a new species through natural selection. Now compare a Rottweiler at 140 pounds to a toy poodle. Sure, the difference in appearance is huge, but nothing at the DNA or chromosome level has changed. They're both dogs. Creating a toy poodle was done through man-made directed breeding of the same species. Through thousands of breeding combinations and experimentation in dogs over centuries, a new species, other than a dog, has never been developed. Nor has something like a cat or a rat been born into a dog's litter unexpectedly through all these combinations and breeding trial and error. As long as man has been paying attention, there's not a single case of anything being born going back thousands of years to recorded history, where that creature being born is not the exact same thing as its mother. Nor are there any cases of a species being born as species A, and by the time of its death, it's become species B. That's worth repeating to all these people that bow down to all this evolution nonsense. There are no documented cases in human history of what is called evolution. Somehow evolution is accepted science without one shred of evidence. Let that really sink in. There's no evidence supporting it. Zero. Science believes amphibians are the link between land animals and fish. What evidence can science present to prove this? None. But it sounds good in a lecture. Here I've prepared a list of brand new species that scientists have observed being spawned, brand new creations, when the parents of those species was something else. Here's the list. None. Zero. In schools, they say life can evolve if given enough time. Here's the proof of that statement. Zero. If we supposedly came from monkeys, then why do the monkeys still exist? So we evolved from a particular monkey species about 100 million years ago, but that monkey or similar monkeys swinging from the trees of Madagascar, they've not evolved a tiny bit in 100 million years? Does that make any sense? If we made it all the way to jumbo jets, wouldn't they have come part of the way with us? Those same monkeys that we were hanging out with, we were in this tribe and they were over in that tribe. And we've come this far and they've done nothing. They're still wiping their ass with their hands. Shouldn't these monkeys at least be like middle ground in evolution? Like riding horses, for example. These monkeys should be riding horses like they did in Planet of the Apes. It's like two boys being given a tennis racket in first grade with the same coach and the same workouts. One goes on to be Rafa Nadal and win 14 or 15 majors, and the other still can't open a can of tennis balls. Why didn't those poor devils, the monkeys in the neighboring clan from us, why didn't those poor devils come along for the ride with us, at least a bit? Like I mentioned recently in the Life from No Life section, how did all these thousands of species supposedly start in the first place? They say something like lightning on primordial Earth struck a pool of water. They also tell you about amino acids and proteins combining somehow. Not only has no new species ever been created via science's own documentation, this theory asks us to believe that inorganic molecules combined in some way to form life, which goes against the scientifically accepted law that the universe moves towards entropy and always moves towards the chaotic state. Chaos cannot randomly combine unorganized particles to produce order, which is the same as life in this example. I mean, entropy and how the universe always moves towards it is the second rule of thermodynamics. And life itself breaks that rule. And they don't talk about it. They don't mention it. Nobody cares. Let's return to our own species, human beings. The people who supposedly, we say, run things here, they may be something else, but that's a discussion for later. If we came from monkeys, according to the Darwin alkalites, there should be hundreds of hybrid species that get us all the way from monkey to the modern human. If the original monkey species still remain, and they do, there are very primitive monkeys all over the world, then that means there has to have been a split where one tribe advanced, leaving the other behind to poop in the bushes. If we can have one split, then we can have thousands of splits. Then, why don't the thousands of hybrid species that got us here from there still remain? I'm not talking about fossils at all here, or collecting bones like Lucy. I'm saying most of them, the hybrids or whatever the splits were along the way from monkey to man, I'm saying they should still exist in some jungle somewhere. We have us, we have the original, but we don't have the thousands of missing links in between. They should still be alive and kicking, playing music around a campfire somewhere. We're told they all died out, like the Neanderthal man. Why just take him for example? Him or Homo erectus or whatever. That's one of these species that constantly walks around with an erection, I guess. I mean, let's just look at Neanderthal. Wasn't he stronger than us? Are we told he was bigger and stronger, albeit uglier? Were Neanderthal women with big fat fingers unable to sew and stitch, so they couldn't get good textile jobs in the early 1800s? That's why they all died off? Forget the ones that should be alive. Where are the fossil records of what should be millions of missing links? Where are the bones and skulls when modern man and woman have been excavating the dirt for thousands of years? We find about 6 million skulls piled up right under the whorehouses of Paris via the Paris catacombs. You ever check this out? Paris catacombs is bones stacked up block after block after block, but we can't find a missing link related to our evolution other than this Lucy, other than this Lucifer, this partial set of bones. It's just a tiny little partial set. People think when they talk about Lucy, it's a full skeleton. You can go see it in some natural history museum. No, it's just like half a jaw and a few bones. It's nothing. It's a joke. Did you know it's necessary to dig 4 or 5 stories down into the earth when erecting a skyscraper? There's massive digging all over the world, and all they have is one, quote, revolutionary find called Lucy, supposedly millions of years old. Since it's monkey-like creatures we supposedly evolved from, there should be hundreds of millions of these hybrid creatures who have lived and died, meaning there should be at least hundreds of thousands of full skeletons. And all we have is this Lucy. Give me a break. The major focal point of our evolution is the moment in history when the sea creature became a land creature. How could this possibly happen when you just spend 5 minutes just thinking about it? We never think about this stuff. I think we just go through school and life and it just comes in and we store it. We never even think. Nobody does. It couldn't happen what they say happened. Sea creature to a land creature. The sea creature has a food source that lives in the sea. Let's say at some point in history that creature could, just for example, for a very short period of time, that sea creature could get up onto the land. Because that would be so comfortable for a sea creature that's lived millions of years in the sea, could get up onto the land to sun itself. Or maybe there was a tanning salon or something up there offering a free first session. Forget about the lack of what could be accomplished on the land, for he has no legs. He would only try to go on land for one reason: to look for food. And he would soon find that there's no food on the land because he's the first one up there, remember? He's the first animal to ever get upon the land, the first fish or amphibian or whatever, the first thing to ever get upon the land. So what the hell's up there to eat? His own flipper? Let's assume that grass, bushes, and trees were evolving at the same time on Earth. This first animal upon the land must have very closely resembled a fish, because that's what he was, where he came from, the water, of course. Up until the moment, of course, he threw himself up onto the land. Assume he is content to flop around on the land and look for food in that manner. Are we to believe he was suddenly able to, I don't know, eat grass or eat tree bark, and his digestive system, that evolved over hundreds of millions of years to live in the sea, instantly became like that of a cow's GI tract, and grass and weeds provided this fish creature nourishment as he laid there on his side in the wet mud grazing grass, deciding to breathe air for the first time in history? What came first, his ability to breathe the air or chew a cud? You can see how ridiculous this is getting, but let's do one better. If electricity of some kind, or lightning, or spark, or static electricity, caused life to spawn from inorganic molecules billions of years ago, this means every living thing came from the same pond of goo. Or was it 100 monkeys with life itself? All these ponds of goo all over the world just happen to form life at the same time. Now, if what they're telling us is correct, of course none of it is, but just suspend disbelief and follow it along. Well, life miraculously had to be sparked in one pool, one place. At what point in the evolutionary fork in the road of a bacteria, say, did one strain of bacteria go on to become a human being, and another strain of bacteria moved on at that fork in the road to become like a blade of grass or one of a million other things? How about the poor devils who just stayed bacteria and are still bacteria today? How unfortunate for those that just made it to become the blade of grass but didn't go along any further than that. Think about it. If our great-grandfather of 10 to the 15th power would have zigged instead of zagged, you and I right now would be growing in some meadow somewhere. If we're told that we were once bacteria, but we just continued to advance, why did all the other species stop advancing? Why did something ever become that blade of grass, for example, and stop? We all came from the same pool, right? One-celled organisms, right? Right, Neil deGrasse, right? Neil deGrasse. He should have stopped at a blade of grass. Maybe they were confident in their primitive form. The grass were just confident in their primitive form, where human beings could not be fulfilled like that until they invented a cell phone. Just a moment ago, I suggested it would suck to be a blade of grass. Perhaps it's a lot better than we know. And once you achieve that level of evolution, you don't want to go any further or do anything else than be a blade of grass. But then when or where did a flower come from? It's all very confusing, because if life spawned, it all came from the same source, like Alexander Kovinus in those movies. But the real hybrid monster called Michael from those movies, Underworld, is Michelle Obama. And she wouldn't have worked in those movies too well. It would have been too scary. We all know all the bullet point mumbo-jumbo associated with evolution. That creatures get better over time via natural selection. It's all about survival. It's why the cheetah can reach 60 miles an hour. We're told that over time, the slow cheetahs got eaten, and the fast ones got away and fucked. We all understand the basic premise here. Then why are humans so ridiculously fragile? All animals from a fish to a grizzly bear are perfectly suited to their environment. The human never has been suited to any part of, quote, Earth from a physical perspective. Never. Is this the best a few 100 million years of Darwin's, quote, selection and evolution could do? We can be killed by an infection that follows up from stepping on a sharp rock. We die from colds. Did you ever see your cat laid up with the flu? Did you ever see a bird have a coughing spell? The heater goes out in January in the middle of the night and we think we're going to die. And there's a bird in the tree looking right in at us after our heater's gone out. And we're so worried. Is the heat technician going to come fix it? I don't know if I'm going to make it through the night. And there's birds in the tree looking in at us, not cold at all. The look on the bird's face. Who's the smart one now, you heatless motherfucker? Where's all this hundreds of millions of years of bettering ourselves in evolution to help us out from a survival standpoint? Our bones are like twigs, for the most part. I mean, the little metacarpal bones in the hands and the fingers. I've broken metacarpal in my foot from just basically stepping down off of a step. We have no natural protection from the cold weather. If we get our clothes wet outside for just one night when it's under 30 degrees, we're pretty much dead without a fire. Yes, basic hypothermia at that level, that basic level, can kill you. For crying out loud, the modern man with a $2,000 mattress can barely get out of bed in the morning because of a bad back. Sorry, Darwin, if evolution was real, our skin, right now, would be thick and strong. Only the sharpest knives would cut it. It wouldn't burn in the sun after just an hour. Many animals have thick coats that you can only stab with a knife straight on. You slash them the side, coat's so thick, won't go through. If anything was real about evolution, our bones would be twice as thick as they are today. We wouldn't have rotator cuffs that tear from trying to reach around and scratch our own backs. Of course, this could go on about the fragility of the human body and how it's not suited to this environment. What do you think the script would have people say to that? That we were once upon a time a very tough creature and we de-evolved when high-rise condos were invented? What would make the body become fragile if it was tough over just a few hundred years? And guys, about what I said about scratching your back, I've partially torn my own rotator cuff. It's very common. Never reach around behind your back with your hand, placing like your knuckles into the lower part of your back and try to go up to scratch. That's evolution for you. Thanks, Darwin. The script regurgitators of academia would come forth and say that 1,000,000 years ago, man used his intellect to survive and build spears, and he harnessed fire. Okay, fine then. How did the thin-skinned, weak creature with bad knees survive before the moment he gained this unique intellect? From a common sense perspective, nothing here holds water. Because we are not, and we never were, a physical match with our environment, this means the human being either is not natural to this realm, or our DNA was changed at some point in the past. I don't have all the answers. My role in this is to look upon this script of the official stories, no matter what they may be, and call bullshit when I see it. Once you drop the veil, it's easy to do this. Since almost everything official is bullcrap, this book's long. Stop demanding to know why and exactly what the answer is all the time. It's likely something we'll never understand anyway, all of this. And the chase, we know where the chase gets us. It gets us nowhere. You just observe the bullcrap, call it bullcrap like we're doing here, and move on. Our body was not meant to survive here without a lot of help. And that help is called technology. Topic 2. ISIS. A convoy of Toyota trucks the Pentagon can't find. The final 4-year term of the Obama administration was all about ISIS, which for some reason he called ISIL, while the entire news media called them ISIS, while John Kerry sometimes referred to them as Daesh or Daesh. ISIS is the Islamic State. The L in Obama's ISIL, ISIL, means Levant, which is a large region in the Middle East said to include Israel. So, Obama went out of his way to call them the name they prefer. As an example, a ridiculous one, but as an example that gets the point across. Let's use that old show, The King of Queens. Let's say in the show, that guy really believes he's the king of the whole state of New York, and not just Queens. Now, all the TV guides in the world call him, as we know the show, just call him the King of Queens. But Obama refers to him with the respect he really wants by calling him the King of New York. Daesh or Daesh, pronounced both ways to just constant confusion regarding this group called ISIS, is an acronym for the official long name for ISIS that ISIS supposedly hates. Daesh, that is. Yeah, it's confusing. By the way, they supposedly threaten to cut the tongue out of anyone using the term Daesh or Daesh. So I hope you're not reading this out loud in a New York City bus terminal. Or if listening, it's not spewing out of your radio like Radio Rahim so others can hear. No matter what you want to call them, we know that all ISIS did during the last term of the Obama administration was cause trouble, cutting off heads and the like. We know they travel in caravans of Toyota pickup trucks to wreak havoc from Raqqa to Ramadi. It's a great and vast distance traveling between Iraq and Syria all the time. The problem ISIS should have driving for hundreds of miles across the desert is obvious. There isn't a single blade of grass to hide them from the United States drones, which are a little bit better than the ones you could buy at Radio Shack before they closed 1,000 of their stores. Remember, we were told that in 1980, DoD satellites could read the back of your license plate. I bet they've improved then in 30 years, right? The question is, why didn't these exposed ISIS convoys get blowed up by U.S. forces in just a few days running around between Iraq and Syria? There were even stories about the Trump camp complaining that Obama's military would drop leaflets to ISIS oil trucks saying, "Get out of your truck, we're about to blow you up." The story was ISIS controlled several oil wells and funded their mayhem by selling oil. Funny how the trillion-dollar defense infrastructure of the United States was unable to follow oil trucks back home or to the source of the oil like a kid on his bike could have. This topic is yet another example where if you perform research with, quote, trusted sources, you won't get any truth. You have to take a piece of the jigsaw puzzle from here and a piece from there and later combine them on your own using common sense. I'm sure CNN will tell you about all the wonderful progress the U.S. military has made fighting ISIS. I'm sure many good young people in the U.S. Army can talk about real battles and real missions where real people died. That does not mean ISIS was not created and supported to do the bidding of the puppet masters who run this country and the world. The parasites always control both sides. Go find a picture of Henry Ford getting a special medal of recognition from Hitler's minions. Self-empowerment is all about allowing yourself to use common sense, and that's the first stepping stone to inner knowing. This entire society is set up so authority is just bowed down to, and the use of common sense and thinking for oneself has become a sin. Do you believe the trillion-dollar U.S. Pentagon infrastructure couldn't find and blow up ISIS caravans of Toyota trucks rolling across a flat and barren desert? ISIS would be easier to spot than a pile of moose shit on fresh white snow. Even if someone would be desperate enough to latch onto the excuses of Don Lemon as to why we couldn't get him, or why we couldn't find him, or why we had to drop leaflets, amazingly now, we have 100% proof ISIS could have been taken out in about a week. We're now years into the fake Trump presidency, and the script on the news still tells us we're making progress fighting ISIS. Well, I guess it's 2019 now, and they're pretty much under control. How many years did it take when it should have taken days if anything was real? What if it's 2058, and they're still telling us we're not quite there yet, but we're still working on defeating ISIS? What is everybody's threshold in the walking dead around us? Anyone over age 40, here's your proof. Anyone over age 40 may remember this highway of death between Kuwait and Iraq, where during the first Iraq War, the U.S. military spotted close to 1,000 Iraqi cars and trucks fleeing Kuwait City in the middle of the night, trying to get out of Kuwait. They'd spent days there looting Kuwaiti apartments and were returning with stolen microwave ovens and cutlery. In about 2 hours, Every car and truck was charred, and everyone on that long highway was killed. They're like sitting ducks to infrared weapons. This massacre happened all the way back in 1991. I bet the Pentagon's night vision technology has improved in 20 years. Because this entire story about trying to get ISIS all the time is laughable. Something else is going on. You think the US is trying to get what they created? Unlike ISIS, the US was really trying to get the Iraqis coming out of Kuwait. Guys, that's the end of the book reading for this section, but people might be interested in my take on the Gulf War I, Gulf War II, what happened with Saddam Hussein. And I think it's pretty hard to really get a good take on it if you're under 40, because you really don't remember. Not that I was there, but I did watch it every day. I'm well aware the news can make a false presentation, but there were a lot of embedded reporters. There was a lot of video from the ground. It was for the most part a real war. Not everything is faked, but it was all cooked up. Saddam Hussein was set up, in my opinion. So this is what I believe happened. And I don't have a great feel about this because, again, as I was very young watching it, I didn't care about these issues in the same way. But if you do research on Saddam Hussein, you can see, I don't know if it was members of the Reagan administration meeting with him, or he's probably a puppet of the U.S. or a puppet of the one world system for a long time, doing their bidding and fighting that war with Iran for so many years that was so bloody. And, maybe he was promised a reward, and maybe Kuwait was his reward. I think he was set up. I don't think he just decides to go invade Kuwait. There won't be any reprisals from any country. The Saudis won't offer, if anything was real, the Saudis wouldn't offer hundreds of billions to other countries to come to their aid. I don't think he just goes and does that, thinks he can get away with it. He's well aware of what the United States is and military power, and it's possible, but I think he was set up. I think he was owed a reward for being a little puppet, and he said, "Yeah, go ahead, go take Kuwait, and that's fine. Go ahead, Saddam, take Kuwait. Yeah, we won't. We'll just look the other way. It's fine. We'll keep the Saudis at bay. Go ahead, go take Kuwait." Or they told him, and he said, "Hey, Saddam, we've got something for you here, buddy. Here's what we want to happen. Go invade Kuwait. You're going to get 10 times richer or 100 times richer." He was set up, no matter how it happened, in my opinion. So he goes, invades Kuwait. They come out with all the stories like the babies in the incubators. The babies were dying in the incubators, and the Iraqis just came in and just threw the babies out of the incubators because they wanted to steal the parts off the incubators and all that fake stuff. And he was set up. These wars, folks, they love death. These wars are real. World War One was as bloody as they say. I'm sure they love death. Why would any? It's not all fake. So you would say a real war was fought, but think about it. Was a real war fought? So of course, after the United States then screws over their puppet and says, "Oh, we can't have this. We need to go defend Kuwait." And they bring in tens of thousands of pieces of equipment and M1 Abrams tanks and Apache helicopters, and they love planting their foot again so solidly in the Middle East. Here's our excuse to really get back into the Middle East. So they screwed him. They set him up, and I believe that line of cars coming out of Iraq, out of Kuwait, they call it that highway of death, where in the middle of the night, hundreds and hundreds of cars across miles, look at the pictures online, were just charred, and through the infrared technology and the infrared weapons and missiles, everybody was just killed, obliterated, burned out. Maybe it almost seemed like, oh, wait a second, they're not going to let us get away with this. Let's, whatever silver and goldware, cutlery sets we stole from Kuwait, let's get the hell out of here in the middle of the night. And they came in and firebombed them and just killed everybody. And, again, I'm saying a real conflict or a real war was fought because Saddam was set up. But was there a real war fought? As soon as the air operation, for 6 months they just bombed through the air, bombed the Iraqi installation, bomb Iran, bomb. So but once the M1 Abrams started rolling and the tanks and everything, they started to come across the border, there was no war. Go look at the movie Three Kings with Ice Cube and George Clooney. That's what it was. I mean, they didn't have to use all these sophisticated technology and psychological warfare on the Iraqi soldiers and the gay bomb. They didn't have to drop the gay bomb, so they get all busy with each other in their holes. They knew they were outmatched and outclassed. Or they see F-15 fighters flying all over the place and Apache helicopters. They only tiny little pockets of them did any fighting. They're not going to fight to the death for this asshole Saddam Hussein who's lounging around in his gold bathtubs and his gold toilet seats. Tiny little pockets of fighting. I'm sure once the tanks started rolling, 90% of the Iraqi army basically gave up. Gave up. So was it a real conflict? You'd have to say so. I mean, a lot of people died, and there were the bombings for 6 months. And was it cooked up? Of course, it was cooked up. How they played Saddam, exactly how they screwed him, does it matter? He probably is an asshole, deserved to be screwed by. It doesn't matter. Of course, it's exactly what the one world system wanted. But just in terms of the highway of death and them trying to escape Kuwait, and I believe that's real. I don't believe they just pulled out, you know, they asked Sanford and Son Salvage what junk cars he had and pulled out a bunch of junk cars and said there was something and took pictures. And no, they love death, and when it comes to death, it's not faked; it's real. But of course, they're set up on both sides, and people are played, and we don't ever get the real story.